In some ways, what I'm going to talk about with my guest today could be a touchy or even sensitive subject to the person at the top of a business. To others, I'm trusting it will be a breath of fresh air with sound and sage advice. You see, we're going to be talking about succession, and in particular, the need to do it right and to do it early enough, but not too early. I constantly raise my eyes as business owners look to clone themselves or leave it all too late, often to their own personal detriment or even the company's detriment. So let's go get that sage advice from the man who wrote, "Always end with the beginning in mind, how firms can remain great after the founder exits." Please meet Donald F. White. Hello, Donald.
Hey, it's good to see you, Malcolm. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, I've drifted across to Florida, but it's raining there, isn't it?
It is. It's pouring rain. It's like it always does in June. June is our rainiest month. So yeah, it's raining. That's why it's a little dark in this room, because it's really dark outside.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting with a smug smile on my face because it's sun shining here in the north of England. So, at least
22 degrees. Are you kidding?
Yeah, 22 in centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit because I don't do old money nowadays.
That would be 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, very nice. Viewers and listeners, my today's channel leader talk with Donald will be in 3 parts. Almost life stages or towards the end of life stage of a business. Now, first, we'll talk about the main succession mistakes that leaders make. Then in part 2, I'll ask him what leaders or owners should be thinking about and when and how they should go about choosing the right successor. And in part 3, I'm asking him how to use the whole question of succession to build a long-lasting and profitable company. But Donald, before we get started on this 3 parts, can you briefly tell us who is Donald F. White and what brought you to writing your book? What do you hope it will achieve for business leaders?
Well, first of all, Malcolm, I want to thank you for having me today. This is quite a privilege, and we are excited about the book, as you can be aware. My background is very simple. I started in the financial services business when I was just in my early 20s, and I was the classic non-success. Everything I did seemed to work poorly. And I remember I went to work for one firm. I was there for 2 years. They fired me. I went to work for another firm. I worked there for a couple of years and they fired me. And I just kept failing and failing. But the one thing that I think sustained me well is that I had a couple of really good mentors who didn't give up on me. And more importantly, I didn't give up on myself. And so I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it and kept learning and trying to develop what it was. And then I was fortunate enough when I was age 30 to go to work for a tremendous man and company that really changed my life. And we took this thing and he believed in me. I believed in him. He gave me some very strong principles, many of which are in the book, to live by and to work by. And we began to build this thing. And when I was 38 years old, he and I talked, and he said, I think you can do this on your own. And we started a firm, and it blossomed into a pretty successful little company that is all over the state of Florida. We have 5 locations around the state of Florida that we grew. We manage assets, and we as a group, when I left, we're managing about $2 billion US. And so it was, we grew to be a pretty significant firm, but I wanted the firm to continue. I wanted us to keep on going. And I knew that if I stayed around too long, that the chances of us continuing to grow and to prosper and to do well would begin to diminish. And I wanted to put the right leadership in place. So we did. And I was fortunate enough to have some really outstanding people that we brought into the firm, non-family. And we ended up selling the firm to my partners. I exited in October of 2019. Business had never done better. We were at the absolute top. When I left, I actually call it, I pulled a Suzanne Pedersen. She was the person who won the Solheim Cup for the Europeans and walked off the stage to never play golf again. And that's really kind of what I wanted to do. And so when I left in October of 19, I was excited about that. And then, of course, COVID comes in March of 2020. And I was concerned, frankly, because I didn't want the company to suffer. I didn't want to, the boys to and the gals that were involved to do poorly. What amazed me was we had put in the processes that were necessary. And in 2020, instead of the company going down and diminishing during COVID, they actually increased their business by 21%.
Wow.
So during COVID, we didn't go down. We actually went up. Where it's just been an amazing success story for them, and I'm excited for them. But I think that's the goal that I was looking for. Why did I write the book? I wrote the book because when I was looking for somebody to give me some direction in this area, there were no books that I could find that really spoke right to the issue, especially written by people that had been through it. I'd read a few books by journalists who reported about people that did succession planning, but I hadn't actually read any books by someone who had actually gone through it and had some real meat for it. And so I was convinced by my publisher, who is a friend of mine, Don, you need to write a book about this. And I'm a journalism major by education. And so I felt like, you know what, let's do it. And so we did, and we released the book just this past spring, and we're excited about where we're at.
Yeah, it's an excellent book, by the way, and I just like the various stories within it as well, and the fact that, Donald, you're quite a blunt person, so let's move to part one and straight to the point. What are the key and main mistakes that business leaders or owners make in succession planning? And that's if they do any planning. It seems to me there's too much reluctance to let go to grow.
Well, yeah, I think the single biggest mistake is that we think we're indispensable. We don't think that the business can survive without us. And the single biggest mistake that I see is that leaders do not think that the business can survive without them. And that, to me, is the ultimate form of pride. Like that old adage, pride comes before the fall. And a haughty spirit before destruction. That's really what we're talking about here. I mean, this is really the key thing, is we put our pride in there and we say, although the boys can't survive without me, or or my family is not going to be able to do this, if I'm not there. Well, that's the ultimate craziness if you think about it. The truth is we're all dispensable. Every one of us are replaceable. So the single biggest mistake that people make is that they allow their own pride in, to kind of kick in and not allow them to really go forward. Because if they would just release it, if they would just let it go, which really leads to the second biggest mistake. And the second biggest mistake is that we hold our companies with a clenched fist rather than with an open hand. And if we held our businesses in an open hand where everyone could participate in the business, everyone could share in the, in the success of that, it is much more probable that we're going to do well. Now, of course, the problem is when you hold something in an open hand, it could fall out, couldn't it? And you could lose that and so forth. And we think that by holding something in a clenched fist, that we're actually doing the right thing. The truth is, when you hold something in a clenched fist, nothing can be added to it. That's it. That's all you get, just the clenched fist. You get just what's in that fist. But the truth is, when you hold it with an open hand, lots of good things can happen. The other thing that's awesome is that when I put my hand next to your hand, and then we put multiple hands out, all of a sudden we get a much broader base, don't we? And so if we can begin to understand that holding things in an open hand side by side together is much more powerful than just one fist, it really becomes that much stronger.
Yeah. But what fascinates me about that concept, and I love the concept, by the way, is a lot of the family-owned businesses, or should we say the people who have been around for a long time there, do think they're indispensable in one way, but they just don't seem to trust the people below them. Is this something that you've encountered?
There's no doubt. One of the great problems that we have is that we surround ourselves with people that we want to control. And that's not a good succession candidate. You want somebody who wants to fly. You want somebody who's got his own ideas and so forth, or her own ideas. We want to make sure that the people that we surround ourselves are people that we can't control. And unfortunately, when we surround ourselves with people that we can control, you really do become indispensable, because the truth is, if you're not there, the whole business collapses. One of the things that I learned early on was I wanted to have people that I could delegate responsibilities and walk away.
Right.
And when we started to hire those kinds of people, we found that those were special people. One of the things I talk about in the book is that we want to hire people that have the it factor. Now, the it factor is really an interesting thing, because people say, well, define the it factor to me. Well, there was a judge once who was asked to define pornography, and he said, well, I don't know if I can define it, but I can tell you what it is when I see it. And the truth is, that's kind of what it is with the it factor. I don't know that I can define exactly what the it factor is, but man, I can see it when someone's got it. And so that's what we want to do. We want to hire people that are not dependent upon you, that are not dependent upon you. They don't want to be under you. They don't want to be under your thumb. They want to be growing and so forth. However, we want to make sure they have a shared vision. We want to make sure that they're on the same path as we are from a vision standpoint. But that doesn't mean that I have to do everything, like by holding their hand like they're a 3-year-old. The truth is, yes, I want to hold a hand of a 3-year-old, but I don't want to hold the hand of a 30-year-old. No. And so we want to be working together on that basis. So we want a shared vision. We want people that have a very strong work ethic and so on, but that can do that without us being there. And one of the things I talk about in the book, I give this example of a work ethic, and the example that I give is Tiger Woods. Now, if you think about Tiger Woods, when he was a youngster, his father was very, very demanding on him. He was extremely demanding. But there was a point in time when he let go, meaning the father. He let go of Tiger, and he let that kid just run. And his work ethic, meaning Tiger's work ethic, is really an example of what happens when you let someone go. He took and started to run in a way that his father never even imagined he would go, frankly. And the fact is that he became arguably one of the top 2 or 3 golfers that ever has lived. But it was because his father let him go and let him, take this thing and run with it.
And he certainly made a few dollars, hasn't he? Donald, before we move to part 2, let me just remind everyone of your website URL. And obviously, viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me. But for listeners, let me help you out with that. It's donaldfwhite.com. donaldfwhite.com. Go on, Donald. What's the F stand for?
Francis.
But you don't need it on there. Just donaldfwhite.com. Okay. Now, the book is called...
Good Catholic name. Donald Francis.
Yes. St. Francis. I know. It's for CC. Yeah. The book is called Always End with the Beginning in Mind, How Firms Remain Great After the Founder Exits. It's published by Made for Success Publishing. I love the concept, Donald, and the way you write, as I say, it's easy reading, which is what it should be as well. Right, part 2. Let's move on from the mistakes question in part 1. And let me ask you what leaders or owners should be thinking about, and when, and how they should go about choosing the right successor at the right time.
Yeah, I think you can never start thinking about succession too soon. And the reason for that is because, well, obviously, when you're surviving, trying to stay alive, maybe succession isn't something you should be thinking about at that very moment. But assuming that you have a company that is viable and is doing has made its way a bit, we should be thinking about what happens in the event that I die, what happens in the event that I become disabled, what happens in the event that I no longer can or want to do this any longer. And those are really the 3 things that can happen to anyone. And in fact, they probably will happen to just about everyone.
Mm.
We're all going to die, certainly. We may not all become disabled, but there's a very good chance that we may become ill in such a way that we wouldn't be able to continue at the level that we're working. And then certainly there comes a point in time in just about everyone's life where they ask themselves, is there something else that I want to do? And so one of the things, and one of the reasons I call it always end with the beginning in mind, is because I think that applies not only to the company, but to the founder himself or herself.
Yeah.
It has to be an issue whereby we're thinking about the fact that if I in fact end, what am I going to do? And I've talked to too many entrepreneurs who have said to me, Don, I can't quit, because if I quit, I'm going to die.
Yeah,
and
I've heard that
really
many a time, Donald. I've heard that. I say to people, though, look at your skill set. Maybe you could help it with a not-for-profit. There's people out there requiring your experience. But yeah, I can understand that person thinking, I'll die.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, the truth of the matter is that that's because our entire identity, oftentimes as entrepreneurs, is tied up in our business. Yeah. It is who we in fact are. When we identify ourselves, Malcolm, often we do it by saying, I'm Donald White and I do such and such. In fact, one of the things that was really interesting when I made the decision to start writing, I did not actually start writing the book until on my emails, I changed my address and I said I was an author speaker. Right. I identified on my emails. Believe it or not, this is a really interesting thing. Yeah. I took former CEO of Collaborative Wealth off of my tag, whatever they call that address tag. They have a name for it, I'm sure, but signature, I think is what they call it. When I took that off of the signature and I said, I'm an author speaker. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, within 4 months, the book was written.
Right.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because of that identification. But too often, very, very competent people don't think that they have any competence outside of their business. And that is a tragedy. The truth is you have tremendous competence and can be used in a tremendously diverse way. The other thing that I learned was you can't really earn too much money, I guess. But there comes a point in time when, how much money do you really need? Yeah, I mean, I actually sat back one day and I added it up and I said, okay, at the time I was 60 years old. I remember vividly. I was 60 years old and I said, if I live to be 90, which is a pretty big event if you think about it. So if I live to be 90, that's 30 years. And so if I spent, and I came up with a number and I said, if I spent X amount of dollars per month, that I felt was a legitimate budget for me, how long could I live on what I already had set aside? Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that it was virtually 100% of what I could come up with in my mind. And I said, well, wait a minute, how much money do I really need to make? And so I started thinking about that. And that was when we really got active in doing nonprofit work and some of the other things that my wife and I have been involved with. We have a foundation that we helped start many years ago, but we really got involved and just went full-fledged into that in a major way because I felt like we could do more than just make money. Now, what's funny about this is that we've continued to make money. Even after selling the company, we've continued to make money. So the making of money is really the least of our problems, frankly. Yeah. We think that that's the big deal. The truth is that for people that are relatively successful, especially those that have built a great business, the money part of it is not necessarily the most important part. And that also applies when you sell the company to finding the right successor, which leads right into what you were talking about. One of the single biggest problems that I see, Malcolm, is too many of these great entrepreneurs, they go and they say, okay, I'm going to sell my company. And now they look to sell it to the highest bidder. And the problem is that especially in a small company, that is not what this is all about. It's about culture.
Hmm.
And you need to make sure that if you've created a particular culture, that you bring in a person or a group of people. In my case, I actually brought in a group of people that had the same vision as we did, and they were buying into our culture. I have a very dear friend, excuse me, who was a CPA here in town, and he and I had talked, and he said, Don, I'm at a point where I think I'd really like to start doing other things and so on. I'm going to sell the company. I said, great. His name was Gordon. I said, Gordon, who are you going to sell it to? Oh, I've got this great firm that has offered me more money than the thing is worth. And I said, really? And he said, oh yeah. He says, I'm all excited about it and so forth. I said, well, tell me about those people. And he told me about those people. And Malcolm, I could tell from the moment that he started talking to me that the only thing that connected these two people was money.
Right.
And so I said to him, I said, Gordon, let me ask you a question. If money was not what this was, in other words, if they weren't going to pay you a dime, would you still want these people to take over the company? And he hesitated. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I think it's a pretty good question. Just answer the question. If money was not the object, would you hire these people to take, would you ask these people to come in and take over your company? And he paused and he said, I don't know, which by the way means no.
Yeah. I got you there.
But he went ahead and he did it anyway. In spite of my counsel, he actually went ahead, pulled the trigger. That was 2.5 years ago. That CPA firm today is basically worthless.
Right.
2.5 years ago is all.
Yeah.
They have lost.
Brilliant observation, Donald. Brilliant observation. And I just want people just to think about that one very carefully. Just reflect again on what the advice you gave to Gordon. Just say that again, please.
What I said to him, essentially, Gordon, I said, Gordon, if money was not a factor, if they weren't going to pay you at all, would you still want these people to be your partners? Would you still want these people to take over? And he refused to answer the question, Malcolm.
Yes. Yeah.
Effectively. He refused to answer the question. But he did answer the question because he had put money before people. And when you put when you put profit over people, you're headed down a wrong path. You're headed down a path that's going to be very, very, very dangerous. And one of the things that I am a big believer is that you have to always put people over profit. If you put people over profit, what's interesting though, is that your profit is usually even better.
Yes, without a doubt.
Which is the remarkable thing about it. It's almost a dichotomy if you think about it. But at the end of the day, putting people over profit is to me the greatest single thing that you can do. So when you find or you look to find someone to take it over, you need to make sure this person thinks the same way you do. That person has the same culture that you're trying to create and will continue that culture. Now, we're not asking them to run it the exact same way, perhaps, but we do want to make sure that, look, your clients are attracted to a culture. That's why they came to you. Your clients deal with you, not because you have the best product. We all have the same products, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if I'm a car salesman, I sell the same automobiles as the other car salesman just down the block, right? Yeah. I mean, why do people buy 100 cars from me and only 5 from him?
As you say, the culture,
Culture.
Yeah. My final part, Donald, is for me as much as for my viewers and listeners, how to use the whole question of succession planning to build a long-lasting and profitable company. What's your thinking here?
Yeah, one of the things that my original mentor, his name was Bud Jordan, said to me is he said, Don, always build a business that people will line up to buy. Think about that. Always build a business that people will line up to buy. So I said, that's an interesting idea. So what that meant was I could not be the most important cog, because if I'm not there, then there's nothing to buy, right?
Yeah.
So we had to think about building our company in such a way that, and by the way, Malcolm, this is why I always hire the youngest people. When you come into my office, it used to blow my clients away. They would say, geez, you're always the oldest guy in here. When you were 38, you were the oldest guy. The fact is that I always wanted to have these younger people. Why? Because for most importantly, is that they're going to last long before, a lot longer than I can last. But more importantly, they bring an energy, they bring an interest, a thinking that I don't necessarily have. The truth is, I would never date someone 30 years younger than me. We don't have enough in common, but I'll hire somebody 30 years younger.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll want that person to be in my life in that way. But I'm not going to ask them to be my life partner. I mean, so there's a difference there. Sustainability is what we call this, Malcolm. We really believe that every company needs to build themselves in such a way that they can be sustainable, because things are going to happen. Events are going to happen. You said it in the open. So many people are trusting fate. Don't trust fate. The truth is, you can do things on your volition. You can do things on someone else's volition. You can do things on God's volition, which I would call fate. But the truth is, it's always better if you can do it on your volition. So I want to take as much control of that as I possibly can. Now, I can't control fate. We all know that. I'm not suggesting that I'm God here. Okay. But I can definitely control the way I respond to fate. There's a great story about Gary Player when he won when he won the British Open, and he won it in Carnoustie. I think it was 1963. And the wind was blowing out of his mind, Malcolm. And it was just crazy, as you know, what happens up in Scotland, right? And it was blowing, and it was sideways rain. And he says to his caddy, he says, "Laddie, this is our kind of weather. We're going to do well." And sure enough, they went out and they did well. The next day they woke up, and as you know, this happens in Scotland, absolutely perfect. Not a breath of wind, 20 degrees, like you're talking about where you are. I don't know that it was 20 degrees, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Beautiful day. Says to his caddy, he says, "Laddie," he says, "I can't believe it. This is exciting. We are going to win." He goes, "Wait a minute. Yesterday you loved the wind. Today you love the calm. What is it?" He says, "Laddie," he says, "I accept the things that I cannot change."
Yes.
I accept the things that I cannot change. I love Gary Player because he's so energetic and so forth, but he always accepted the things that he couldn't change. And by the way, that's why he won 170 worldwide tournaments in his career. Can you imagine winning 170 of anything?
Yeah, fantastic.
170 professional tournaments. But that was the kind of guy that Gary Player not only was, but still is. And is an exciting person to emulate.
Yeah. Donald, sadly, I must leave you from Florida soon. I started by giving everyone a pointer to the many times I've been exasperated by a leader's lack of decisive succession planning, especially amongst family firms. I trust my guest today, Donald F. White, has sparked the resolve in you to do something about it. Start with buying his book. Thanks for a great interview, Donald.
Thank you, Malcolm. Enjoyed every minute of it.